in the air, like Frontier on Netflix and Channel Zero's new season on Sci-Fi, and a new Netflix show called V-Wars coming out.
You're a busy man.
It's no rest for the wicked, so to speak. No rest for the wicked.
And you guys can't leave the panel because God won't allow it, right?
He won't.
I told you that God wouldn't let you take me.
And even more than that, I've asked people to just close the doors and keep you here until you join Eden's Gate.
Yeah, awesome. So honestly, it's an honor to share this stage
Thanks,
with you to do this. And let's start with breaking in stories. How do you get into the entertainment business?
It was not something that I grew up thinking that I would do. When I was a kid, I talked to myself a lot, and my mom tells this funny little story that I used to change clothes all the time, like during the day, like constantly just in and out of stuff. Little Elvis outfit, I'd be a hitman, I'd be this and that. And one day she stopped me. I was about 7, and she said, "Why do you keep changing clothes so much?" And I said, "Because it's no fun just being me." And so I think there was always an element of wanting to become other people. And I went to university with no idea of becoming an actor. I played football, like not soccer football, but Canadian-American football, you know what I'm saying? Yeah, that's right. Played football at a university called Queen's, and I'd always written a little bit, and I had a professor in my 3rd year who I took a playwriting class, and he encouraged me to pursue acting, and I did. I met my wife. I was cast as Hamlet in my first play, and then I met the girl who has now been my wife for 22 years. The same night I was cast as Hamlet, and kissed her, and fell in love with both her and acting, and we started this crazy journey that took us to New York, and had babies, and had more babies, and moved around a lot. And
how many babies exactly?
Well, we have 3.
Awesome.
I call them babies. They would be horrified because, like, the oldest is 21, and then the next.
But they're always your
18,
babies.
50. Yeah, of course they are. I can steal my oldest son. He called me this morning. He's an actor. He's on a show called Heartland, and he lives in Los Angeles now. And he called, and he's doing this acting class, and it's a very masochistic art form, but as part of this class, they had to write out what would be the last letter to someone you love, if you were saying goodbye to them. So he called me this morning as I was getting ready to, sign some autographs, and he said, like, I'm doing this class, and I have to read you this letter that I wrote to you as a goodbye. So I'm crying. I have to go. It's like this really beautiful and heartfelt moment with us. And he knew full well where I was, but like that's the thing about actors, they don't really care so much if they had something to express, and this was the moment that it was going to happen. So it was just this lovely little bizarre moment, and my life has been a series of lovely little bizarre moments, and I feel very fortunate that I've been able to raise a family and fight to keep a marriage together, because for all those married folks out there, it's not easy. Being a parent is not easy. Doing anything you love is not easy, but worth it. So it's been a difficult but worth it life for me.
Awesome. And shortly into your career, Men with Brooms, right?
Yeah.
Leslie Nielsen.
Yeah, funny guy.
What is that like?
Well, that is the movie that saved me from a career as a lawyer. My dad was a lawyer, became a judge, and I got my wife pregnant when I was in theater school, and then I was, trying to start out and be an actor. And there's no more certain career path you could choose as a young father than to become an actor, because what could go wrong? So we had this baby, and I was waiting tables and struggling, and I was a company member. I got cast at the Stratford Festival, which is a big Shakespeare festival in Canada, and I was really a glorified spirit carrier, I'm not gonna lie. And then we had another baby because, double down, right? If you're gonna add a degree of difficulty to your journey, just keep having babies. So we had another baby, and I wasn't making any money, and I wasn't providing a very good life for my family. And I thought, I have to change this plan. So I wrote my LSATs, which is I don't know if it's the same thing in the States,
Yeah,
but it's
yeah,
to get
yeah.
into law school, and I got into a bunch of law schools because I knew that path. My dad had been a lawyer, and I was a good student, and I was going to do that, and I had read for Men with Brooms months before. And I remember lying in a bathtub in this crappy little apartment we were living in, like all of us bunched in together, and I had the flu, and my agent, who I hadn't heard from in forever, called, and she's like, "Hey, Greg, congratulations, you got this great part." And I hadn't auditioned for anything in so long that I had no idea what she was talking about, and it ended up being Men with Brooms with Paul Gross and Leslie Nielsen, and that might have been the purest professional joy I've ever had, because I got cast in this movie, and it was going to be like an in the theaters movie, and I was walking to my shift waiting tables at the restaurant, and I was walking down the street thinking, like, you're going to be in a movie. And I had this massive smile on my face, and I was so happy, and it was an incredible experience. And he was a wonderful, wonderful man, very generous with his humor and his which was juvenile, and and Paul Gross was like a big brother I never had, and that was a very special moment. It saved me from another path that I would have taken in life.
Right. That's awesome. Yeah, the dream, you know, kind of.
Yeah, it
for
was
sure.
amazing, and I had this at the time. I had this commercial that was airing in Canada where I played Chauncey the hairdresser. It was this very fey. And the premise was really funny, if not offensive, because in hindsight it was really offensive. But I played this hairdresser, and salon selectives were such an amazing product that all the salons had closed. So Chauncey, the hairdresser, me, had to go work in an auto body shop to get another jobs, but I had my little lap dog, and I was using like the compression gun to blow dry my hair and stuff, and it was not sensitive in any way, and this was a long time ago, but I had that commercial on, and then this movie was opening across the country, really. I don't think it played in the States, not a big curling country here, and I was waiting table that night, and people would come from the movie and sit at a table, and I was serving them, and they'd be like, "You look a lot like this guy that I just saw in this movie." And I would be like, "I am that guy." And they're like, "Why are you waiting table?" I said, "Because they didn't pay me that much. And I've got kids at home, and I've got bills to pay." So there was that funny, weird period of a number of years where I was getting some work, but not enough to really provide for a family. So it was a pretty strange, it was a humbling time. It was strange because you'd see people and they'd have one idea, and then there was another reality, which is often the case, right?
Yeah. So you're here today because
Yes.
of Far Cry 5.
Yeah.
But I'm going to be a little selfish with this, and I got to ask because as a filmmaker and as Cronenderg, as one of the ones I look up to, History of Violence, you kill it in that. What was that like to
I was a little girl. I was not an it. That was a little girl I killed now.
I know. But what
Yeah,
was
I know
it like
what
to work with a master like that? You know.
I'll tell you, it was. I owe him my career, in many ways,
Wow.
because that movie did so well critically and commercially, and it was such. I mean, it was Viggo Mortensen and Ed Harris and Maria Bello and William Hurt.
Stephen
McCaddy, who I did literally, that was the first time, I'm gonna get back to your question, but that was the first time we worked together, and then over the next 3 years we did 13 movies and TV shows together.
He's amazing.
He's great, and he's a super intense guy, and I was warned about him beforehand, like my agents were
Big
calling me,
time.
like, he's a really intense guy. You might not get along, but we got along famously, and he's a wonderful actor and a great person. But that movie I auditioned for, and David wasn't in the room. I was doing this little movie of the week in Saskatchewan at the time, and I came back to Toronto. I put it on tape and sent it away, and he responded to my tape, and he wanted me to play that part and Stephen McCaddy, and it was important for him. If you haven't seen this movie, I play this spree killer who opens the movie, and the first 8 minutes is this long sort of tracking shot that follows me in a sort of very slow and lazy way as we come out of a motel room, and I pull this car forward, and then I come into this little checkout office at the motel, and then horrible things have happened, and then another horrible thing happens. But it was a really impactful moment, and so I never met him, they cast me off tape. The studio wanted to expand that part and cast Philip Seymour Hoffman and Tom Waits in those 2 parts. And David fought and said, I think it's really important that the audience doesn't know these guys.
Right.
Because they're the anonymous face of violence and horror. So I got cast in that, and I went for my first wardrobe fitting, and Denise Cronenderg, David's sister, was the wardrobe lady. And I made one of my sort of first of many professional missteps. She was talking to me, and I saw a bunch of other people around. I was feeling pretty good about myself. This was a big movie, and we're talking about the character in the wardrobe, and there's a bunch of actors that are kind of around that I've seen before, like around Toronto, not the big stars yet. And this gentleman walks up to me, and he looks kind of familiar, but like I don't really know, and he's like, hello, Greg, and I'm like, hey man, thinking it's just some guy that I've seen around Toronto. And I turn away from him, like my back to him, and I start talking to Denise again, and Denise goes, oh, David, do you know Greg? And he's like, of course, I cast him. And I'm like, oh my God, that's David Cronenderg. You just blew off like some more, like, you know. But I covered it. It felt like a long time, but it was, I felt like I covered up, and he was amazing to work with. He has a very dark, creative palette, obviously. In real life, the loveliest man. Is an incredibly confident filmmaker, works with the same crew for all of his movies, so there's a real shorthand. But for me, as an actor, it was incredible because you're on a film with all of these legends, Academy Award-winning actors and talents, and David, Mr. Cronenderg, treats you with the same respect and gives you the same freedom to create as any of them. So much of just the little behavior, like when I'm checking in the payphone for the change and looking at postcards. Like Billy, the character, he's a kid, a sociopath, but in over his head, and he's hungry and he's lost and he's poor and he's on the run with this really intense, jerky uncle. And to me, it felt like I just wanted things to be ordered, so like straightening the chair when I come out of the room, and all those little behavioral things that he loved and allowed me to play with and create a character that audiences responded to and were maybe a little scared by. And then the studios, more importantly, got very comfortable. So I went from that, and New Line Cinemas was the studio for that, and then they cast me in Shoot 'Em Up right afterwards with Clive Owen and Paul Giamatti and Monica Bellucci. And that History of Violence was the first of many, many, many bad guys. And we were doing ADR for that, and there's a line in it about when I'm talking to my uncle in the car, and I'm like, oh, we're so broke, something along. And David had me in the ADR booth, and I said that line. He's like, you make me so sad when you say that. Like, what is that? I said, I'm broke, David. Like, that's me. Like, I'm afraid in this world. I've got all these kids that are relying on me, and I'm selling a dream. Like, that's it. And he goes, I promise you, that's gonna change. And fortunately for me, it has become a really rewarding life. But he was the one who took a chance, and I owe him my career for sure.
Yeah, wow.
Yeah.
So, and if you guys have not seen this movie, please do yourself a favor. Maybe not the younger ones, but check it out. It's so good because this is your first video game acting, as far as I know. And so, but I mean, his acting, it goes, like when I found out I was doing this panel, I was like, no way, is this for real? It was so awesome. And but how does the process from film acting to the video game, what you did, they buy your likeness, they say, okay, it's going to be you doing this. How's that process different? What's the differences in this?
Well, it's
going to Far Cry 5.
Yeah, it's interesting because I mean I had never done a video game, and I was too busy having kids to be able to be a kid and enjoy video games through my sort of like early 20s years and stuff like that. So I was disconnected from that world, and I didn't realize how extraordinary games had become. Character development, the narrative, the storytelling, the graphics, how cinematic it all felt. So I didn't know. So when I was approached casting in Toronto, they had been looking for this character for Joseph Seed. Dan Hay, who's the creative director of the Far Cry franchise, had been an extraordinary man, really. Like, I really dig that guy. So they had been looking for their Joseph Seed because he had a very specific idea in mind, and the character had to embody a lot. And they were looking, they couldn't find the person. And they wanted to start shooting early in the new year of, I want to say, I don't know what my years are anymore, but I want to say they wanted to shoot in 2017, and this was sort of late fall 2016. Casting was now looking everywhere. They called me. They said, would you be interested in auditioning for a video game? I said, absolutely not. They said, can we send you just some writing? And Drew Holmes, who is a writer for Ubisoft for the Far Cry franchise, for Far Cry 5, he was the head writer. He wrote this amazing monologue that's part of the game. It's a little bit shorter in the game, but when it comes to the player and they're in a cage, and I talk about being young with a pregnant wife and being so afraid and being poor and really a nobody from nowhere. And we talk about how my wife, I'm working 3 jobs, and one day I'm sleeping on the couch, and she comes home and she wants an ice cream cone, and I'm too tired to get up, so she drives off, and when she leaves, she's in a car accident, and they bring me to the hospital, and I can only smell burnt flesh, and I don't think it's her because I don't recognize the nail polish on the toes. And that got me, man, like that detail. Because when you get busy and you don't notice the little details about the people that are closest to you, and you realize how absent you've been. So that detail in the writing I found spectacular, and then it walks me through how I'm going to take me to another room. She's passed away, but our little baby, our little girl's gonna survive. And then they write this really unsettling and powerful moment between my father and my daughter, which ends tragically. I'm not gonna give any spoilers, but I make a choice in that moment. And anyways, the writing was dark and glorious, and I fell in love with it immediately. And I'm like, I have to do this. So I went, and David Footman was the director. I met with him. I did it once, one take, and then I got up and I left. And they were like, where are you going? And I just disappeared. And they sent my tape to Dan and to Drew, and he said as soon as he saw it, that was it. Like, he just knew that he had his father. And they offered me the part. And it was only supposed to be, it wasn't going to be that much of a commitment. And we hadn't talked about likeness or anything at that point, but they flew me out to Montreal, and I got to spend a day with Dan and with Drew and with JS, who was also involved in the creation of the game. And they walked me through the world of Montana and Hope County, and Dan's passion and vision for this game was extraordinary, and it is provocative subject matter for sure. As an artist, my job is to take interesting characters and give as much of myself as I can to them and make them as real as possible. And I think the more real you make a character, the more of yourself you give, the more dangerous it becomes, because it's recognizable as a real person as opposed to some, twirl the mustache villain. And the father felt very close to me in a lot of ways. And even some of the proselytizing about social media and how we're disconnected and how we have this wonderful tool that we can stay connected in a lot of ways, but it also isolates us. We spend so much time just looking back at ourselves and in an echo chamber of our own thoughts and our own vanity and our own insecurities, that we lose sight of the people that are closest to us, like the real people in our life, our family, our community. So I was challenged by those thoughts, and I really wanted to explore them. So we started on this game. And I'm sorry, this is the longest answer to a simple question. What's the difference between me? I do this. Oh, no. I'm so anti-soundbite.
This is why we're here.
I'm not the sound. Right? I'm like the sound buffet. Like, I'm the sound 14-course meal that like your grandmother makes for you, and you have to sit through and eat all of it because she's just like, eat. I'm sorry. So it was this amazing process. Now we get to shooting. Holy crap, was that? I apologize. Preachers gotta preach.
Yeah, they're doing. That's why we're here, man.
So they've written this
awesome.
amazing character. I get to the actual shooting of it. And it was not, I respect voice actors for what they do. My process wasn't like that because I wasn't in a booth doing vocal work. They take you in a room, not quite as big as this, but like gives you a reference, and it's empty as this, and there's cameras all the way around you. And you have this suit on that kind of looks like a wetsuit, but it's not. It's made of like a sticky material, and you have these dots, these silver balls all over you, and the cameras capture your motion. And then the geniuses behind the computers build worlds around that motion. But they also have dots on your face to map your face. And you wear this contraption, which is sort of like a helmet, and there's 2 lights, and there's a close-up camera on you and a microphone. And then you act in this world with other performers. And the helmet is uncomfortable. It took a minute to figure it out, to figure out how you would feel. But the people at Ubisoft, particularly on this team, because that's the only team I've had experience with, were so committed to creating a real emotional experience for the player. And as me as the conduit of that they went out of their way to create an environment that as an actor was incredible to work in. So I'm playing, most of my stuff is opposite a player. So Randy, a guy who works for Ubisoft, who was the player, has a camera on his head. So I'm talking to him. So it really was like shooting. It was kind of like doing a play because you're in the space and it's a little bit more physical, but it also felt very intimate, like shooting a movie. And they did everything they could to create space for me to have moments of revelation. And I feel proud of the work that we created together, both in making the game, but me selfishly as an actor, you want your work to be exceptional. You want to chase great all the time. You want to be honest. You want to share something of yourself that's meaningful to other people, whether it's entertaining, whether it's unsettling, whatever it is. And I felt that we created a lot of moments in that game that when we were doing it, I knew, okay, like, I went to some really dark places, I'm not gonna lie. Everyone's got their issues, and part of my job is to be honest with those and bring those to the light. But then when I got to see how it translated from what I had watched in the playback of the camera, because we can see that happening, and then it goes away to the guys, the artists who do the rendering, and I could see what they had done. I remember looking at YouTube clips that came out the day before the game came out. I don't know how that happened, but and I was sitting with my wife and I was watching a lot of the monologues about my siblings, and then I'm like I had little goosebumps of they caught not just the performance, they caught the soul. Like there's an aliveness in the eyes that they catch that I don't know what magic they have in their artistry, but it was as compelling and as human as any of the film work that I've ever done. So for a first and only experience so far making a video game, I couldn't ask for anything more. They were from top to bottom, and it's a huge team. I think there was 6 studios around the world programming and doing. We did most of the shooting in Toronto, but I had to go to Montreal where they'd map my face. Oh, so at one point in the game, like early in the game, Dan said, no, it has to look exactly like you. Like it can't be anyone else. So Ubisoft bought my likeness to use for the posters and the figurine and for the game itself. And I think that's the first time Ubisoft had done that, to buy someone's actual likeness. But to me, it's really, it was challenging and it was extraordinary. And I loved working with Ubisoft and with that team, and I've become friends with them and colleagues in a way, and look forward to opportunities to work in other games or other mediums, because storytellers are storytellers. They're going to create stories, and I'm on board with them because they just really were great. And the game was a success. I mean, that first week it had was mind blowing, and it exceeded every expectation, and it's continued to provoke and challenge and engage players around the world, and I think it will continue because it's timely and it's topical, and it's also a lot of yeehaw fun too, right? I mean, you get to do a lot of stuff, and for my kids, they get to try to kill me. What could be better for teenagers with their father? It was funny that they sent me a whole bunch of games when it was coming out, and my daughter's not a big video game player at all. But she was playing because she had the opportunity to try to kill me. And my wife yelled down to her one night, she's like, Ella, it's time to go to bed. And she's like, yeah, I'm trying to kill Dad. A moment of silence, and my wife's like, okay, half an hour more. Half an hour. So,
Let's get this
it's
done.
great. It's great. It's one of those grace notes in a career. It's a highlight for sure.
Yeah, and I really think that you guys, Ubisoft and yourself, made something special, because from the moment you turn around in the beginning and you see like your performance, it's already there, it's already going. And I feel like a lot of video games rush a performance, and you just kind of like how you talk now, you're taking your time. The father's taking his time. Like the airplane crash, the helicopter crashes, and you're like, I'm gonna finish this song,
Yeah.
Girl! Come in! Over!
A wretch like me.
Please,
And it's just like, and I remember sitting there going, okay, we've arrived to a new level in video game acting, and I really think you took the video game, like the entertainment business, to a new level. And
I appreciate
I
that.
honestly think that.
Thank you.
When you guys agreed, did you guys see that performance? Like,
Thank you.
and thank goodness they bought your likeness, because maybe all that wouldn't have came through.
Yeah, I don't know. Like I don't
Yeah.
have I had no other experience, so this was a first time for me. But one thing I do recognize is great writing,
Yeah.
and a great story. And this was I had both of those, and then we also shot. We did a companion film, which was on Amazon, but now I think it's everywhere, called Inside Eden's Gate, which was amazing, with a director named Barry Battles, who's just was awesome. And we shot that in Montana, and it was really kind of cool. I didn't realize, because I'm often oblivious, that there was massive forest fires happening in Montana when I was flying to shoot there. So the plane lands, and there's a driver waiting for me, and I step outside. I'm like, God, it smells amazing in here. There's like a little bit cedary in the air and stuff like that. And I'm like, God, it's beautiful. I'm thinking big Montana fresh air. And the driver looks at me and goes, that's because our state's on fire. I'm like, I'm just going to be quiet for the rest of the drive. But they were, the points we were shooting, and I'm playing as the father, and it was interesting. And Drew, one of the last days I was shooting, sent me the final monologues. And so in between scenes, I was walking through the hills of Montana exactly as it's represented in the game. And there was literally, I could see fire all the way around me on the horizon, and the sun was almost blacked out with smoke. And I'm going through those final monologues about the end and the collapse. And sometimes an actor needs a little bit of help to make it real, and that was one of those moments that I can feel it in my bones now when I talk about it. It was magic, and you just knew that our life were in a little dance together, and I was happy to be at the center of it.
Awesome. A while back, you did a TED Talk about method acting, and so if you guys don't know what method acting is, it's kind of what you elaborated on, just getting into the character. And after Billy kind of sparked up huge roles of like bad guys, right? So, is it hard? Have you gone too dark sometimes in your own mind that it scared you?
It's interesting. It scared my wife.
Yeah, because it does affect the actor. It affects the people around you.
Here's the thing that I feel very fortunate, because I got my wife. We had a baby when I was still in theater school. I was just a kid, so I've had to learn, and that's really when I was just first learning how to act and how to access those things. But I had a baby at home, so I had to learn right from the start to compartmentalize things. Like I work from myself and the people and the things I love most, and I use that and I share that. But I also know that then that has to stop as much as I can, and then I go home and I, bake cupcakes and read bedtime stories and walk the dogs, and so I feel fortunate that because and this is often true in life, what you have to do, you do. So I had to be able to keep everything in its place. And I go to some very, I go to dark places and I go to vulnerable places, and a lot of the sad stuff makes you, because I use, it's awful that I say use, but I use my kids. Like if I'm playing a scene where I've lost someone, I'm imagining,
Right.
what that's gonna be like. And you go through that and you're saying your goodbyes in your mind and all of those things, and you get to a place where you, as a father, are losing something that means the most to you. But you're so grateful that that didn't happen, So at the end of the day, you go home and your babies are in sleep in their bed, and you see them in the morning, and you get to realize this is a new day, and I get to say the things that I wanted to say and be the person I wanted to be for you. And then you forget, but then you get another chance to do it again. So yes, the only I did a movie called Poor Boys Game with Danny Glover, and I played one of my monsters, and I was this really violent and abusive, drug-addled, racist-y bouncer, but who loved his brother and was protective and was complicated. Like he was, was a guy who's threatened by everything around him and is fighting to try to keep a hold of the little that he has. But it was pretty bad. And I was watching the movie, and we were at the premiere, and my wife was sitting beside me. And as the movie was going on, and as I was getting worse and worse and worse in it, I could feel her moving away from me, like further and further. And she was practically sitting on the next person over's lap. And we were having coffee the next morning, and she's very quiet. She's often quiet, but she was particularly quiet. And she's stirring her coffee, and she looks up and says, "I want a divorce." I'm like, I don't even know what I did. Like, that's one of those, and she says, that I know that that's acting, but that's also you, and I don't want you in the house anymore with me and the kids. And I was like, so did you like the performance? I waited it out. I knew that it would pass, but it's hard. She won't watch stuff. My wife, and she doesn't watch most of my work, because even though intellectually you understand it's a performance and you understand it's an art form and whatever, but you still are seeing your partner, the person who sleeps in the bed next to you and who tucks your kids in at night. You see them doing things. You see them bringing parts of themselves that hopefully don't, flare up during day-to-day living, but that's a part of you. Like, there's nothing that's not me that I do. There's nothing that, I think that it's disingenuous for actors to say, well, that's not me. It is you. I mean, you might not do that. You might not do that on a day-to-day. You might never do that, but you have the capacity to do that. And if you're honest with yourself, you realize that, we are about, one stressor away from letting those monsters out. And my job is to just push myself and strip away until that monster is just staring back at me, grinning.
It's got to come from somewhere. Right?
Yeah, you.
Yeah, exactly.
You. So.
Yeah, and it seems like you've really mastered this craft, and it's amazing to see your work. I'm going to ask one more question, then I'll get over to you guys, because you guys have questions, I'm sure. What was the process of coming up with the father, and what, did you take any inspirations from somewhere, and was there time constraints? Because I know Ubisoft, they worked pretty fast too. Did any of that factor in, and how was the whole process of the father? How did that get birthed?
So right from that first monologue, again, because the first lines that I read were like, I was 23 years old and we were pregnant with our first child, and I'm like, oh, okay.
I know this.
Yeah, I know this.
Yeah.
And being, struggling and broke and just not knowing if you were man enough to be the man that your family was going to need. So I had a lot of, different acting, like read from a charismatic point of view, like where you just, like you're not having to, like, how can I, like, what of me can I find that's going to make this work? There was so much, but it was right down the center for me. And that's how I work with all my characters. It's just like, what in my life can I use that I'm going to bring into line that's going to flesh out this character. So I had no outside influences. Like I didn't look at any cult leaders from around the world. I have a background of public speaking, like that TED Talk was one of the things I enjoy that. So emotionally, I understood the vulnerabilities of this character. I also understood the desire to make things better in a way that I understood. So no, it was the same way I'd approach any film role, and in fact maybe even easier, because as a father, I'm struggling myself with these questions of where our world is heading, and maybe being a bit of a Luddite, like, okay, can we step back from this breathless race for more and more, faster, quicker, because I think that there's something gained, but there's for sure something lost. So it really felt very personal, and also the team there, particularly Dan and Drew, like we would talk and we would drag monologues to me. Like they gave me freedom that if I wanted to personalize things and I wanted to make it more mine, whether it be a phrasing, a cadence, anything, like they were open to that. So the broad strokes and most of the fine strokes were written by Drew and Dan, but they gave me great freedom, and there's a great collaborative spirit to bring my own little personal stories into it, and that makes it more real for me, and therefore more dangerous, because I'm fighting for something real and I'm losing something real, or struggling not to lose something real. So it was and the time was no worse than any film set. We were sort of staggered. We would shoot a little bit of it, and then we'd shoot a little bit more. The whole process, I think it took maybe five months off and on.
Oh wow!
And I think there's like 47 minutes of the father in the game, and we probably shot twice that.
Right.
But just for the sake of there were some big sermons and stuff that just didn't fit in with the game, as they try to, selfishly you want all your performance, everything. You're like, they're making a game that is supposed to be fun and entertaining for people, and that they're gonna create their own. They're gonna literally, and the neat thing about this open world concept of this game is you're gonna live your own story, much like you do in life. You're not being forced to consume or to experience the game in any one particular way. I've got friends. My buddy Tim, I don't know if you guys are Winona Earp fans. That show with my buddy Tim Rozon, he plays Doc on that show. He was a super good guy. But he texted me on the first day the game came out. He's like, I've been sitting in my trailer all afternoon just fishing, Greg. I love it. I'm just gonna sit here fishing. So, if that's what you want to do, you can do that. And at some point you're gonna have to confront each of, Jacob and John and Faith, and then we're gonna have our little moment together, our moments together. But within that beginning and end, you live it. You live that game, and I think it's pretty extraordinary storytelling because you're the author of it.
Yeah. Well, maybe as this video game medium continues to grow, maybe in 20 years, how they do with Blu-rays now, we'll see all the cut scenes, all the hidden stuff that made it on the cutting room floor.
I'm really excited to see where this medium goes, because it is so. The storytelling is really sophisticated, and the characters are amazing, and the graphics are madness. And it allows an interactivity with the player that is I still love a good movie, but there's something to be said for this sort of moving towards, there seems to be a hybrid happening where the player, the audience it's much more involved. And it's exciting because you get to experience the game much more intimately.
Yeah. So I have seriously almost 30 questions for him. I got to 3.
That's my fault.
Because I love his, but your answers weren't they great answers and so profound? So I am going to turn it to you guys, because this guy's already almost made me cry 3 times. I've never had a panel like this. It's so great. So we're going to take some questions. We may get to one.
I'll try to be shorter.
Depends on his answer.
Yeah.
So right there, I see your hand.
Besides the cave scene, what would you say was the most challenging scene for you to act, and which would you say was your favorite to
I think that it's going to be the same answer for both, and I don't want to give any spoilers, but there's a moment at the end where things have, I've lost a lot, and you know, though that moment I could feel was going to be a challenging moment, because to be honest to it, I had to bring my heart to that. But there's also the rage of a sense of betrayal to it. So we did it. We did all of those speeches one after the other, Faith and the John and the Jacob, and they were all full. And then we did that last monologue, and I don't know if you know what I'm talking about. I'll just call it the snot monologue. And in the studio, yeah, just to give you a little context, in the VOM, there's a train in Toronto that goes past about every half hour, and it ruins the take every time. So we did those other ones, and then we did one pass of the snot monologue, and it was good, and it was full, but there was the dissolution of self missing, that rage, and then something came to me, something that I don't touch, and Dan and Drew and David Footy could literally see it, like, and they were like, now. So we did this take, and it was what it was, and there was like silence in the lawn, and I'm gonna rabbit ears. Dan said, please tell me there was no expletive train. And there was, and we all waited, and then you could hear the train like 4 seconds later after he said that, but they got it. And then the other thing he said, he just turned to like the tactical team behind them, and he's like, everything that just happened there goes in the game. Like the snot, the quivering eyes, all of that. He goes, I don't want anything pretty about this. All of it goes in the game. And then he walked away, and that was my last scene that I shot for them.
Oh, wow.
And it was just exhausting, but it felt like that was a fitting end for me on that journey, because it was just,
Wow. Amazing. Another question?
I have a couple, is that okay?
Probably one, your favorite one, so we can get other people in.
Okay, so
You can come ask the second one at my booth this afternoon.
Sure.
I have two other ones for you.
Okay.
So I'll do that. I have a character question.
Yes.
As Joseph, why do you think Joseph was so focused on John's sins? So like I think everybody's here's played the game, but when John is drowning the deputy,
Mhm.
and he's like, do you mock the cleansing, John?
Mhm.
Why do you think he was so sort of overbearing with John's sins and less so with like Jacob's and Faith's?
I think because, and I believe this, that for me, it was the Word of God that I was fulfilling. And there was nothing extraneous, there was nothing self-aggrandizing about that. That really was in service of a message that I was ordained with. And with John, I felt that ego was coming into play. And it wasn't about the message, it wasn't about saving people, it was about him. And that needed to be corrected. So that's it. It's just the frailty of human ego was at place with him, whereas for me it felt like I was doing what had to be done or what I was chosen to do.
Do you stay in character in between takes?
I'm lucky that I don't. I'm actually, it's sometimes when there's a very emotional scene, I'm gonna stay in my own space. I'm pretty good about creating that space without needing to be a jerk to people around me. And here's the other thing, that film crews and the crews on the game and all, they're so sensitive to that because they know you're in a very vulnerable and emotional place, and it's very quiet when scenes like that are happening. Like everyone just understands what you're going through and what you're doing. So sometimes I'll listen to music. And that's mostly for the very sad, emotional stuff. The anger stuff, sadly, is so easy that I can drop into that, like a second. So I can be joking around, and I'm really silly on set because I want to have fun and I want people to have fun around me. But then when the cameras are ready to roll, it's the monster has a long leash, and he tends to run as far as he wants, whenever he wants. But yeah, no, I don't. So method acting, there's also, like, that's the method acting. There's a lot of actors that stay in character, and you need to call them by that name, and they live that. And there's some amazing actors that do that, like a Daniel Day-Lewis or whatever. I mean, he literally will live the arc of that character for the entire shooting process, and you have to call him by that character's name. That's not my process. I mean, I'm going to work from myself, so it's a fully immersive character, and it's bringing the most intimate parts of me out. But you don't need to call me by my character's name. I think because I think of myself as the character the whole time I'm shooting anyway. Like, whatever name you want to call me. I dragged so much myself into that character, and so much of that character into me, like this drunken little dance, that the lines are pretty blurry at that point. And I just trust it. I just trust that it's going to be what it needs to be.
Awesome. Right there. Yes, you.
Okay, so you said your daughter played the game.
Yeah.
Did you play the game, and did you kill yourself?
No, I'm a terrible gamer. I'm going to be honest. Like, embarrassingly bad. During the press thing, they had me play a game, with some influencers and gamers and things, and I kept losing walking myself to the helicopter, because I'd be like, I couldn't keep going straight, and I wasn't going fast enough, and it kept happening. And the other thing is that I get motion sick. So if you're steady with that first person, the POV, like, it's okay. But if you're I'm like a vertigo game player, so I was making myself sick, and I'm blurry-eyed. So I haven't played a lot. I watched my son play a bit. I wasn't happy with how enthusiastically they were trying to kill me. Christmas next year might be not what they were hoping for. But yeah, I've seen the game, seen enough of it, seen some really good players play the game, but I suck.
I didn't mean that in a bad way.
No, I know. I'm not a.
I just thought I was wondering if it would be too meta for you or whatever.
No, I die a lot. Like in movies and games, and it's always really like I die a lot because the bad guy usually gets his comeuppance, and I die horribly, and I try to die honestly. So, I mean, I'm a whole like animal rescue worth of cats' lives I've used up over my career. It's funny, when I was before digital cameras, the future, you used to do Polaroids, and my little daughter was like 3, and I came home one day and I kept all of them like as a memento from shows, and she had taken all these Polaroids of me in various stages of brutalization and death and put them on a row of the window, and she was taking each one and kissing it and going, "Boo boo daddy, boo boo," and she would kiss each of my dead me's. My kids have all turned out to be actors. Like, this is, I tell you, this is the ultimate badge of failure as a parent when your kids are interesting artists. Really, like you just didn't give them all the stability they needed. But they're amazing kids, and you do your best, right?
Awesome. Right down there. Yeah.
If you could, would you participate in any other video games if you had the chance?
Yeah, this was such an incredible experience that I would be. It's the same way I would approach any role. I have to like the character and the project. But yeah, I think the medium is open for incredible storytelling, and there's some wonderful artists in that field. I mean, Troy right next to me does some incredible work and has created some really vivid, iconic characters. So as an actor, if there's great writing and a great character, then I'm interested in doing it, and particularly now seeing how it turns out.
Right. Space Invaders? Go ahead.
Yeah. Have you heard of the machinima genre of movies?
I have not, but I'm going to now.
Awesome. It's like machinimas are like cinema stories being told with video game graphics, but manipulated through a computer or a provided editor.
Right.
And it's something I was curious if you would be interested, or you believe something like that would have a place in the future, where video game graphics are being used to tell a story. Say much like Pixar animation, like an animated story, but more adult-oriented, like Far Cry 5 or Grand Theft Auto. And you're actually watching a story from start to finish in that world, but it's just played out for you to be able to experience.
Can I ask a question of you asking me the question? And I'm just, what's the benefit of that as opposed to a filming? Like, if the player doesn't get to interact or change that, or do they get to? Because I'm not familiar with the genre. So like, or is it just because the visual is an intrigue, gives you just, it's almost as if like, why do that, the Vincent van Gogh movie recently with all the paintings and stuff? Is it just that? or is there more to it?
It's like you're watching an actual movie.
I get that, but why do that through computer graphics as opposed to just regular film? Other than they're pretty amazing, and I bet you can do other things, because it's not CGI, it's like you literally are building that world. Yes, answer, yes, I would do one of those. If the writing was good and the character was interesting.
Or if you would enjoy them, that's what I was
I'm sure I would. I don't know what the process of capturing that performance is. I'd imagine very similar to what I did with Far Cry. But yeah, I think that the landscape is changing. The way we consume media is changing, but also the way that we can express ourselves as artists is changing. And I feel blessed that I'm getting exposed to a whole new world, and the passionate fan base in this world is amazing. Like the fan art and just the kindness, the generosity of spirit that I found with people online. When the game came out, because that's a concern. Obviously, you wonder how people, because they have their other favorite games, they have their other favorite characters, how much animus you're going to get. And people, with one exception, I mean one tweet, since the game comes out that was negative, people have been so supportive, and it means something, because it's being an artist is at times lonely and you're vulnerable. Like you've put yourself up there, and the kindness is appreciated. So thank you for your kindness.
I think we have time for one more question. One more? I saw you go up first.
So what tips do you have for leading a cult?
Well, I mean, first you have to get the call. I mean, so, you know, and it's not a dial-in number, so you have to, yeah, it's funny, people laugh, like people talk about that. There's a lot of, you could start a cult online. But I think that rather than starting a cult, I think we should create really great families, and whatever that means. I don't think that there's any rule, but I think it's important for us to support each other and to challenge each other and to just spend time. You know, time is the most important thing, and face-to-face time and eye contact time, and if you can carve that out, it doesn't have to be a lot, but it needs to be some. So I think family, rather than cult, is really important to me.
Awesome.
I think it's a lost art.
I'll take one more there.
Hi.
Seeing that this was your first video game,
Yes.
and they had to strap you with and all that, and get your likeness, was that ever distracting for you to be surrounded by those little cameras?
Well, to get the likeness, they would take me and they flew me to Montreal and they put me in a room and there was like hundreds of cameras and they mapped like every little nick and cranny in your face, and you really realize how old you're getting when you start to look at some of those real close-ups. Like, wow, that's like those pores, you could be moon craters. But it was, the mask on the helmet on my head was, it took a minute to get used to, because say like I want to touch foreheads with someone, which I did with my brothers in the game, you can't do that because there's a thing in front of you. So it was interesting because you would cheat it like beside each other, and then they would do one where you take those masks off and you just have these goggles on with some motion capture, so it just catches your face, and then you would actually do it, and then again. I don't know how the magic behind the curtain works, like very Wizard of Oz for me, but somewhere behind there, they then put my face doing that moment as if it happened in one take as opposed to two. So it was, the helmet's a bit uncomfortable at first, but they are like, are you okay? Are you okay? Are you okay? I'm like, I'm tired, I need a water and a nap. So they would build in nap times for the father, which was good. Awesome. And on that serious note.
Well, Greg, you've been so generous with your time.
Oh, thank you.
I thank you so much for coming here. And I think I speak for everyone. We will be on the lookout for what comes next for you. We are super excited about the success of the game and the success of your career. And we hope that you would give us more experiences like the father to live out. And just thank you so much again for your time. Let's give an applause to Greg. Thank you, Greg.
Thank you, Joel, and thank you all for coming and spending a little bit of time with me. It really is, it's a pleasure to meet you, and I'll be around for the next couple of days if anyone wants to come say hello.
Awesome.
Take care, guys.